Right, welcome back. As promised, back onto the engine, much to the delight of many people, I'm sure. It's been a while. There's been other things obviously we've been concentrating on while waiting for parts to turn up. I move on to something else. It will happen throughout the build, as you've seen already. So when I get to a stage, it's like I can go so far, I've got to wait for parts, I'll move on to something else. I moved on to the carburetors, stripped them down, because as you saw in the previous videos, we've completely rebuilt the carbs. They're back into a bank of 4. The only thing I need to get now is the actual overflow pipes and brand new fuel lines when it comes to that stage of actually putting them back in the bike. As you can see, I've got the engine back up on the bench. I've had to release the secondary shaft. I'll show you what I mean, because obviously I had this in place with the crank was sitting with no shells. As I explained in an earlier video, the shells have actually gone to an engineer, they've been measured, they're fine, they're within tolerances, so I can reuse them. So I've had to release, as you can see, the secondary to be able to pull the crank back, because obviously the primary chain's in place, so it was tight, I couldn't move it. I had to basically undo the circlip on the end, pull the socket, pull the sprocket off, tap it back through from the other side. That's given me enough leverage so I can actually get to the shells. As you can see, one is already back in place. I am lubricating them as I go, so that's where we'll start. But nice to be finally back on it. I have already started cleaning up the bolts from the engine. As you can see, the front ones are already done. And you can see the stable, I've still got the rest all the way through to do. I'm not going to show you how I clean them up because I've shown you many times. Obviously it's the wire wheel, and I just feed them into the side of the wire wheel and just move it around and clean them. So I'm going to get those cleaned up because obviously I'll need those when the top half goes back into position so I can bolt things down. Obviously I've got the shells to do in the top half as well of the engine. Undecided at the moment whether I'm just going to do sections and then call it a sort of a day, or just film everything and then I'll put breaks continued etc into the next episode. So not quite sure at the moment, but we'll see how we do for time. Right, hopefully that's not too dark. Trying to find the best angle to actually film so people can see. That seems to be okay. So as I say, I've soaked one in oil, so I'm going to continue the process for the other 4, and then I'll do the same on the top half of the engine. Alright, so as I say, I've already put the first one in. That's the second one. Before anybody asked, before these actually went off to be checked, they were actually bagged and numbered, so I know exactly which one came from where. You can't really go wrong, well, I suppose you could, with putting these back. You notice there's a notch just on that upper edge. There's also an identical notch just there, and also the oil hole should match up. Right, and the last one on the bottom side of the engine. That's nicely in place. So that's the bottom shells in. So now I can put the crank actually back in position and replace the actual seals. Right, so I just dug out my bag from the box that I've got with all the parts in it. This is the bag that I marked up with all the seals. So we've got crank left, crank right, kickstart, output, shaft, gear change and clutch rod seal. So the two I need are these two to replace these. The other thing, obviously, before I put the crank back in position, put the actual cam chain in place, so I'll never get it back in again. So next job is put these seals on. Right, so that's the seal in position on both ends. Next job to do is actually put the cam chain over the crank before I locate the crank back in position on the shells. Right, so that's in place. Let's just move that to the back. Right, as you'll see, there's a groove on the outer edge and there's a groove actually in the casing. It's the same the other side. So to make sure that's flush and sitting comfortably, which it is. Right, so now I've finished with the crank for now. All I've got to do now is put the secondary back in place. So I just need to line it up. With the bearing the other side. And then I can knock that through. As you can see, the bearing there. Need to knock it through from this end. Right, to make it easier to get the secondary back in, I've had to remove the oil pump. Now, as you can see, it's actually started to locate. The shafts come through the middle of the bearing on this side. Now I can just tap that bearing back into position. And then when that's in, I can then feed the oil pump back in on these locators. Right, so that's knocked through, it's all back in position. I've just put the oil pump in as well. And movement on the crank. Right, so all that's left to do now is put the bracket back in. Right, so then I can get the washer, the sprocket and the circlip back in place. And that's in place, you can hear the difference in the sound. And there's a groove. Right, so all that's left to do is the cap on the other side. Right, so they're all finger tight, all back in position. So next, I'll move this out of the way, I'll put this back here for now, and then we'll put the shells in that one, and then we'll continue in the next episode. Right, so the top section's on the bench now, exactly as we did before. Again, I'll show you on this one. That's the little notch. There's a notch in the end, and that sits in. Get it the right way round would help. Right, 2 to do. There we go, all installed. So what we'll do in the next episode is we'll actually join the top back to the bottom again. I need to find a diagram because there are certain areas where you can gasket seal and certain areas where you can't. So I need to dig that out and then I can show everyone. As I say, then we can get the top half joined with the base. Got these bolts to clean up. And then we can bolt it back in position. Right, so thanks for joining me on that one. I hope that one was helpful. As I say, I'm just going to do these in small segment videos. As I say, I'm not sure if I'm going to just film one long continuous and keep breaking it into to be continued and then starting for the next episode, or actually do separate episodes per little section. Again, your feedback is much appreciated, so let me know in the comments box below, what would you prefer to see? Would you prefer to see just a continuous run that's broken up with to be continued, or would you like it in a separate? It's up to you. I really don't mind. It's whatever's easiest for people to actually learn. There'll still be separate videos, so I don't know if it makes any difference, but let me know in the comments box below. As I say, next episode we'll actually move forward. I'll dig out there is a picture I've got somewhere, I'll dig that out of where you can actually gasket seal it when you're joining the top and the bottom sections together. It will be nice to actually get that as one lump again. Then we can move on to pistons and barrels and bring down the gaskets as well. I've still got all the gaskets set ready to go, and then we can move on to the head. So exciting times, it's getting there. And then obviously later on will be the timing, etc. Once everything's sort of coming back together. I may even time it up when it's actually back in the frame. So, but glad that's got to that stage. So links to other videos top left and top right, and join me again next time. Thanks for watching. Cheers. Bye.